Mr. Jones, question panel.
This question is to the congresspersons sitting out there because you know your districts, your boots on the ground. So all three of you are lawyers, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. And have all three of you participated in redistricting in your capacity as elected officials ever?
I was on the special committee on redistricting when I was in the Texas Senate, and I was been through about every redistricting since we redistricted city council back in the 90s.
Okay,
And I was in the State House in 2021 when we
during
did
that
this
redistricting.
Yes.
So you have or you have not?
I have not been involved in redistricting in any official capacity. I was a sitting member of Congress when the last map was drawn, and so I observed the redistricting process, but I have had no involvement in it.
Okay, so then my question is to the two, Congresswoman Garcia and Congresswoman Crockett. This redistricting process, please explain to me if it's the same or different than previous redistricting processes. Could you do that, please?
I can tell you that we noticed a lot of inconsistencies, and I was able to testify about this because we are in litigation, and it is so interesting that the state for 4 years has been arguing how these maps were race neutral and how great these maps were. And we do know that every single Republican voted for these maps, but now all of a sudden they don't like the maps that they put into place. But nevertheless, I will tell you that there was some random person or persons that were in some random room that were drawing maps. I never got to see the person. We heard rumblings that it was a guy that had messed up maps, I believe in Colorado or some other state he had been in. And so this was not a matter just for the people that are sitting here. We have the ability to draw maps as lawmakers. There is this thing called Red Apple. And we actually, when it comes down to doing our maps for the State House, we didn't let some random person in the room come and draw those for us. We actually drew the maps ourselves. And so I participated. I offered an amendment specifically on Texas 30, which I was not representing or running for at that time. And in order for me to get my amendment approved to even be able to make the amendment, number one, we had to pre-file, which that never happened. We had gone through redistricting for our state house maps. There was no pre-filing of the amendment required before you could actually bring the amendment to the floor. So I had to pre-file with an amendment, and then ultimately, before I could actually bring the amendment on the floor, whoever these random people were in the room, I never got to go. I had to hand my amendment off to one of my colleagues from the Republican side. They then went to the people in the back somewhere. Then they came back out and told me whether or not I could actually present my amendment on the floor. We also know that they did what they're doing now, which is pretended as if they were going to draw some maps, but in actuality, somebody else is going to give them the maps. And then they had people testifying as if they were listening, but then there is no clear record for the courts about how people feel when they directly impact their districts, because they weren't given an opportunity to talk about the impact on their districts because they don't know the impacts. But they get to say that we did hear from them when you really didn't.
So in order to file, would you agree with me that in order to file an amendment, there's got to be something filed?
Yes.
And I have to like it or not.
Yes.
And then if I think something needs to be changed, then I file an amendment to change that. Would you agree with me on that?
Yes.
Okay. So in the process that we're having right now, there literally is nothing to file an amendment on. Would you agree with me?
Correct.
Right. And so let me ask you this. Whenever there's a map proposed, because whenever there's one filed, and for purposes of people who don't understand, the way that a bill looks for a map is it has a whole bunch of like zip codes.
Yes.
It tells all of the zip codes that are a part of whatever congressional district it is. So it's hard to tell what it looks like on the paper, right? So, but sometimes you can see the picture when you file what the map actually looks like in Red Apple.
Correct. So my amendment it had the picture of the district. So you could see the counties, you could see, because Texas 30 fell under the Voting Rights Act, it was important to lay out what the citizen voting age population was as well, to make sure that there were no violations. So it's a little bit more, but you do get typically a picture.
But my point is this: after you give them the picture and the people in Ledge Council redistricting put all the zip codes in there, then you can tell. And would you say that's, and this is a yes or no question, is it simple or is it complicated?
Oh, the entire process is very complicated.
Right. And the reason I bring that up is the fact that we're not having public hearings where people have time in advance to look at these maps so that they can figure out where all these zip codes are, to see how it affects them, is definitely a lack of transparency for the people that are fighting for their rights to stay together. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would. I would say that this is not a flaw in the process, but instead this is
A design
correct.
in the process.
Correct.
And so that's a problem. So are you asking this committee specifically, who holds these public hearings, that once the bill is filed, that has everything divided up, that there be public hearings across the state so that people will actually know how this bill/map affects them, and only then can they make educated testimony about how the maps will affect them? Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as we heard the chairman say, we are here to testify on this instead of for or against. And you know, as a representative, that typically when we have hearings, you are testifying for or against. But when we go to court, because this ultimately will go to court, because I know how Texas likes to do, ultimately, when you're looking at the record, it doesn't look like anybody was against it.
Exactly, which is why when you come up to testify, and you understand this because you used to sit in this seat in the House, they're asking you to be neutral.
Correct.
Right? Which hurts us in court later. Correct? So are you asking, or you three Congress people asking, that after the bill with whatever map is shoved down our throats is filed, are you asking for us to have hearings, public hearings, evaluate and reflect and figure this out and talk to our constituents, to allow our constituents of Texas to come and testify about the specific harm or good that these maps or that this bill is going to do? Is that what you're asking?
We're absolutely asking for that.
Absolutely.
And I'll tell you that as much time as they are spending during these field hearings without a map, they should absolutely invest even more time once they have the maps. So the idea that they're going to minimize the amount of time that people have to speak on this and actually do less when they have more is a problem, and that should be something seen as irregular in this process as well.
And Representative, my experience, of course, was serving in the Senate, and we did do, during that period, we did 4 field hearings. And of course, the biggest flaw in this whole process is that we're letting the White House dictate and prepare the maps in some back room. We don't have a map. It's difficult to speak about an item that you haven't even seen. So that, I think, is probably the biggest flaw. And secondly, I think there should be robust field hearings, particularly in those districts that are going to be impacted. But keep in mind, 4 districts were named in the DOJ letter. But once you go in there, the domino effect of what other districts are impacted, because you move something here in Houston, it may create a movement somewhere in Fort Bend County or Galveston County. So it impacts all of us. So there should be robust. There's no reason why, in my mind, that you could have had a field hearing in the Rio Grande Valley. It's a 5-county region with over 1 million people, really important to our economy. El Paso, even San Antonio doesn't get one. You know, what about the Port Arthur Beaumont folks? I think it's just a disservice to Texas that we're not allowing all Texans to be heard.
And speaking of, because you talked about it before, communities that have similar experiences.
Absolutely.
Right? So we talked about that, and we talked about already why it's important to have someone who understands what you're going through. For example, for you, Congresswoman Garcia, and maybe everyone, because there are mixed status families everywhere. Don't you think that in a, I'm trying to look at you as I speak. Don't you think that in a community, for example, if you have a mixed status family, right? And you have people actually going through the citizenship process, they have their documentation, right? And then that you be able to call a congressperson like you, Congresswoman, who is going to try to help you get your citizenship because you're trying to go through the lawful process, rather than have a congressperson, if they crack your community, that is actually trying to deport you or get your status in court dismissed. And by that I mean this. We had so many people didn't understand what was going on when President Trump was getting rid of all those immigration judges. But now we see he wanted an immigration system where they could dismiss the cases and literally create undocumented people because they no longer have a case where they're here documented. Don't you think your constituents are entitled to have someone like you who understands the struggles and who's going to try to help them get to a path to citizenship, as opposed to if they call their congressperson in a racially gerrymandered map that is going to try to deport them and break up their family? Is that an accurate concern?
Well, of course, it's always been a concern, and regretfully, I have to tell you that we take many calls where people call us from another district who tell us that they called their member of Congress, but they were told over the phone that there's no one who speaks Spanish to really work with them, or who will tell them, well, we don't really handle those kind of cases, call Garcia in Houston. So we do get those kind of calls, and I say regrettably because it's shameful that those members aren't doing full constituent services, number one, but we have strict rules in Congress that I can only spend resources, time, and personnel within my district, which really limits some of the things that I can do. So I wish that there was more members of Congress that looked like me and did constituent services to everybody in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, whatever language.
So it effectively disenfranchises people who don't look like you.
And it makes them not have faith in government, not faith in the process and the system when they can't even get a phone call returned.
And I'll say this too, would this be accurate? The only way to create a majority Anglo district, right, when you have a majority of minorities, is to literally crack or split the majority minority. So what you'll have is you'll have urban areas where minorities flock to because they see discrimination against themselves in their little towns that they're from. And so they'll get black or brown or Hispanic or whatever minority you are, and they'll drive it all the way out to the rural areas that's majoritarily Anglo. Is that accurate?
Mm-hmm. I think you're very close to accurate. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I think you're pretty accurate.
Right.
I'm gonna say you spot on. That was one of the. That's what it is. That was one of the issues that existed with my district. Just to be clear.
Okay.
While my district's numbers remained the same, what they did was my neighbor Jake Elzy, who's CD6. Jake Elzy represented 3 counties. They ended up taking Jake Elzy's seat and making it about maybe 7 counties or so. But what they did over in Tarrant County was Tarrant County in one city, Grand Prairie. They decided that Grand Prairie was getting a little too colorful for them to potentially maintain control over it. So what happened is this one city got split into 3. 1/3 came to me, 1/3 went to Elsie, 1/3 went to Burgess. And so they cracked that community of one city. And the next thing you know, they're paired up with people that have no idea of what their struggles are in Grand Prairie versus what they are dealing with in, say, farming areas of Texas.
Right. So, and that's my last question. But what the point is that's how they're able to create majority Anglo districts. They crack the minority areas, and then they put a small number of minorities in a district with people who look nothing like them. And that's how they're able to hijack, to terrorize, to kidnap the United States Congress. And it's just right. It's just not right. Thank you for explaining that.
Thank you. And thank you, Representative Jones. I just wanted to say, people say for the record all the time, but this time truly for the record, I agree with my colleagues that we should absolutely have more hearings on the maps for precisely the reasons they just outlined. People need to see what a new map is going to do to their community and be able to come to all of you and talk about why it should or should not, and most likely should not happen based on the things that we've seen. So it's really important that once there is a bill and a map, that the public has an opportunity to see it and to meaningfully give you all input before you proceed. And I would ask that you not proceed, that you make the decision whether to do this or not, that you choose to end this process and focus on the real and urgent needs of our fellow Texans and our great state. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.